All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you know, each Saturday we try to do the show known as This Week in Pop Culture, in which we give you the rundown, the goings on in pop culture, if you will. We know that all of you guys out there, things get busy, so we try to keep you up to speed of what happened in the last week. And of course, I am not alone in talking about these said stories. So I like to welcome my co-host, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, sir?
Good morning and good morning to everyone. We all in America it's still
Wow.
morning for
Wow.
everybody.
It
Yeah,
is
I was going to
morning.
say good afternoon, but then I was like, wait, it's all morning. Normally we do this at 12 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, so it's a little bit earlier. So maybe I'm not firing on all cylinders yet, but I'm happy to be here with you. How about you, Brandon? How was your week going?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. Things have been it's been hectic, but it's been a good hectic. So without further ado, don't want to keep folks waiting. Let's hop right into the story that we have this week. And the first one that I'll get into is regarding Mr. Peacemaker. So this past Friday, the new we had a new character trailer drop for the fan favorite DC character known, of course, as Peacemaker, voiced none other by John Cena. The trailer sees him not only providing his likeness, but also his voice as well to the character that we last saw in this solo venture. That was, of course, a spinoff from the most recent iteration of the Suicide Squad. Spillman, I'm sure you had a chance to see the trailer. What were your thoughts?
Oh, I feel like the way that they program this character, he might be the cheesiest character I've seen in Mortal Kombat in a long time, bro. He was doing lots of juggling. He had Eagle coming in, just swooping down and chopping people up. I think it's Janet Cage, Johnny Cage's daughter, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
She was owning people on there, so I think he was good. It's pretty. The sprite looks very good. It looks like um, Peacemaker from the show, which is a great show. We haven't really talked about that show on this podcast yet because it hasn't come back. But when
No,
it does, for sure, we
you
will
have
be talking about
you have
the Peacemaker
yes.
when it gets back to HBO. But then again, we never know because HBO does like to cancel things that people like. So so I liked it a lot. How do you feel about it?
So, just as I said, it's cool to see the character return. It's crazy to believe that how the trajectory of this character, came about. And I mean, yeah, he's. I feel like he's very much a deep cut for those that know DC and his history within DC. He wasn't, fun fact, he wasn't even originally a DC character. But I'm not gonna spend too much time on that. But just the idea that you have this character that's pretty obscure with those that are casual superhero fans, and then to have him pop up and to really make a splash in the Suicide Squad, and have him make such a splash that it warranted having a spin-off series, which I'll be honest, when I understood that they were going to actually do a spin-off show just with this character, I was like, okay, you guys are counting your chickens before they're hatched. I don't understand why you guys are doing it. And then I saw the movie, I was like, okay, all right, I can. I'll try to buy into this idea because the character was hilarious and he had a great dynamic with I'm brain farting on the other character's name that the leader of the Suicide Squad with
Amanda Waller.
no, not Waller, with
The
the team leader. I'm brain farting when it is. I'll bring it up, but just their dynamic and just the character in and of himself, with the humor that he was able to bring to that. that film. I was like, okay, if this is any semblance of what we have in this movie that we're going to get on a TV show, then I'm in. And lo and behold, once we got the series, it was just a continuation of that. So as I said, to have that character pop up now in Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat is already, let's be honest, really over the top and zany, where it's not a huge stretch to see Peacemaker pop up in there in terms of what we know about that character and what he brings to the table. So I, I'm all in from what I've seen. So do you have any other thoughts before we hop into our last story?
No, I just think that again, Mortal Kombat has done the best job with ensuring that because the fighting game world is such a world where people have been building their own fighting games for years, and instead of like telling people do a cease and desist, they just say, hey, let's make this as close as possible to put your own character in the game and make it as entertaining and ridiculous as possible. So hats off to them for leaning into what fighting game culture has become.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, switching gears a bit into a unfortunate, incident that happened. Also, we just talking about dropping. I was talking about what's dropping Friday, but this past Thursday, Kevin Durant had an unfortunate, interaction with some Mavs fans, and let me see if I can bring it up here. Give me 1 second. But yeah, he had an unfortunate incident with some Mavs fans where he had jogged. He was jogging onto the court, for pregame warmups in the Mavs arena, and he had a fan call him. I'm not gonna say the word. I'll just say the B word as he headed onto the court. It was later revealed that the fans were the said fans were intoxicated, but it still begs the question of just those interactions that we have with sports figures, with athletes and fans. And a lot of times I feel a lot of it is kind of we look past a lot of it, but when's going too far, really going too far. And I feel like if we constantly keep allowing incidents like this to happen, we still run that risk of things becoming getting really out of hand. So we had this incident happen, Spillman, as I said, this past Thursday at a Mavs game. What are your thoughts on what transpired?
I feel like people who consume live sports, live entertainment, have like really broken the fourth wall with a lot of this stuff. They've decided that they are
They've
part
gotten
of the
really
shows.
untitled, I feel, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You said what?
Really, it just seems like folks are getting far more entitled.
For
to,
sure.
So
I definitely agree with that. So I feel like people are just they feel like they own the people that are on the stage or the field or the court, and they can talk to people any kind of way. They can, risk it. But it's just very interesting that people would spend the kind of money that people are spending to be courtside, because it's one thing to scream at the top of your heads from 1,000 feet away from somebody, but like to pay like those seats. Think about it. That's in Dallas.
yeah,
That's probably a $3,000 ticket.
yeah,
Probably it might be a little bit lower, but it wouldn't be. It's not like it's not rent money for him and his partner to be sitting there, and to spend that kind of money to verbally assault people is just crazy. It leads to the entitlement that you see, and it's just sad. I feel like ever since the pandemic, I feel like people have had a switch in their brain that just is turned off. Like you see it all over the place, airplanes, all kinds of places that like it used to be that like,
it was some decorum. I feel.
there's some decorum and also a level of I don't want to get thrown out of this place for the rest of my life because, like, that's really what you're flirting with. You flirt with never being able to go to a Mavs game again. Is it worth that? Like, obviously, they have beverages. We don't know what's in those beverages, but I feel like we know what's in the beverages. So, maybe go a little bit better on the beverages, ladies and gentlemen. Like, a cup of water after every beverage might help. And that was at the beginning of the game. So
Yeah, right.
let's not show up soused if that's what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say credit to Durant because I didn't go into the further details. They were actually going to kick out, those fans, and he told them not to kick the fans out, just for the very reason that you were talking about of understanding that fans paid that amount of money, probably an insane amount of money to have those seats, but also at the same time, even if that were the case, while I understand that there is some level to if you're in the entertainment industry in some form, whether it's as an athlete, whether it's as an actor, whether whatever capacity you know you are in the industry to entertain, right? I feel like there is kind of like this expectation that, oh, you need to have a thick skin, and I mean, yes, to some degree that is true, but at the same time, even though there is a need to have a thick skin, there is a difference between having that idea of being having having a critique of what you do for a living versus just outright like disrespect of a given person that is in the industry. You know, I'll never forget, in talking about Westbrook when he was playing, with the Lakers. He had gone on record many times of talking about, as long as it's about, basketball, and them, critiquing, how I play or what my what I do on the court, that's fine. Like that's fair game. But just to just outright just like disrespect me and name call of calling people out of their name, that's quite different. So I feel like there has become there's a line has become blurry between disrespect and criticism. I feel like with criticism, if you are, talking specifically to whatever that skill that entertainer brings to the table, perhaps you're critiquing, the movie, that they directed or that they starred in, or if they're an athlete, you're critiquing perhaps their what they do when they're on the field or on the court. That's complete. I feel like that's different than just outright just disrespecting him just for the sake of just being like a horrible human being. So
Right.
that but yeah, as I said, that happened Thursday. Hopefully we don't see any repeat occurrences of that. But just as you said, with the nature of how things have become post pandemic, I wouldn't be shocked if we have another story on here talking about something quite similar or unfortunately worse. So hopefully this will act as a warning to fans that kind of get out of pocket and try to engage in behavior like that. But as Spillman was saying at the top of the show, we did have uh, we do have a reason as to why we are doing the show a little earlier today, and that is regarding the travel and adventure show. So let me pull that up for you guys if you guys are um, not familiar. So just a little info on the travel adventure show. Of course, it starts today. Is the preeminent travel marketplace in the DC metro area, a place that helps to inspire travel enthusiasts with travel ideas and to learn more from travel experts on travel trends. It it is the only show in the DC area showcasing, captivating worldwide destinations as far as India to even our local drive locations. Now, Spillman, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to the show. If not, I highly recommend that you do. As I said, it's only 2 days, so it's not even on. Uh, doesn't even run like with other shows running from Friday to Sunday. It is today and tomorrow only. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually in the market for a new spiffy toboggan. I want to get that. Possibly some cross country skis. I'm trying to plan out a trip to a ski chalet. Perhaps I've been wanting to go to a chalet, and meet a Great Dane with one of those big old things of brandy around his neck if I get lost in the snow. That's what I would like to do. I've always dreamed about meeting Beethoven in real life. So this is right up my alley. I like to go on excursions, go out in different kind of places. I live for the adventure though. That's the thing. I'm an adventurous guy. I've done all kinds of things that most people would marvel at and make slideshows on their webpage. And I don't even share that kind of information. I've been to the Great Barrier Reef and all kinds of other exotic locales. So these are very interesting to me. You were telling me that there were deals with a Z with some of these
I like that. Yeah, yeah,
excursions that they
yeah.
that they are packaging and stuff. And I imagine that different kinds of things. So I'm always into that. I think that's what I like as I'm approaching 40. That's where the disposable income goes now. It's things that I may use on a trip that I'm only going to go on once ever. Like I have those fold down waterproof bags in case I'm going snorkeling or something like that, which is very cool. But it's sat in my drawer for 3 years now. So actually 5 years. I took 2 years off. It sat in the drawer for 5 years. It was great. But yeah, I'm really interested in that. Get some new snow boots, go in the snow. Do that. I've never really been to a desert. Have you ever been? What's the most exotic locale or adventurous place you've gone?
Oh man, like I'm afraid I'll probably be a disappointment to you, Spills. You probably have accomplished way more than me travel wise. There's still some places even on my bucket list that I haven't even had an opportunity to do. The farthest that I've gone in terms of a desert is Vegas. That's about it.
I've never been to Vegas, so there you go. I've never seen a real desert. I've heard of them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
So
you know,
that's as
I
far as
like
my
water, so
desert
I don't.
experience.
I'll stay here where the water is,
And
ladies and gentlemen.
even then, with picturing Vegas as a desert, like they have so much of it kind of like fenced off, where even though you're in the middle of a desert, you don't really have as much, I feel, exposure to it unless you are driving on the road from out of Vegas. But once you're in Vegas, yeah, you have your palm trees and you have semblances of desert, right? But not like legitly being in, being on the sand. So yeah, that's the farthest that I've had. But just in talking to the show about the show itself, I've had a chance to go to the show a couple of years now, and yes, they do have some terrific deals. Just to kind of give you a overall lay of the land, if you will, is when you go to the exhibit hall floor, they have basically a breakdown of the different types of trips that you can have across the world, and they have the exhibit hall floor. I guess you can say divvied up into different parts of the world. So like just like you would go if we're almost picturing like an amusement park, right? Where they have the entire amusement park broken up into different places. They have that same feel when you go to the travel and adventure show. Once you get on the floor, they have a section that's all France. They have a section that's all Italy. They have a section that's, all China, all Japan. And once you're in those areas, they have different vendors that have different types of trips for that various, for that specific place, which is cool. It can run the gamut between uh, excursions, cruises. If we're talking Africa safaris, you have different
I'm
vendors,
saying
safaris and things.
cradle of civilization.
And they even, I'm gonna say they
Yeah.
even have panels as well where they'll have major figures in the travel industry talk about different experiences that you can have, and different things that you can take advantage of if you are a travel enthusiast. They have other organizations there, so like if you're trying to get your passport, they have all those organizations there, all
Oh yeah,
those
I need to read mine up. I need to read
they have,
mine up, ladies and gentlemen.
they have
Next
all those
year.
departments there in order for you to take care of all of those necessary intangibles that you need to take care of if you're planning on traveling. So everything is there. So yes, I will be there today. I plan on probably briefly going there tomorrow, but probably the most of what I'll be able to take in will probably be happening today. I will have a guest, a family guest with me, which will be their first time. So it'll be interesting to kind of like uh, experience the show vicariously through them. It's always fun when you're kind of like a veteran and you kind of get jaded a little bit with shows that you've gone to multiple times, and so sometimes it freshens it up a little bit by having someone who's going for their first time. So yeah, it's happening today and tomorrow at the DC Convention Center. If you guys haven't had an opportunity to go, I highly recommend you guys to check it out if you are a travel enthusiast. So, with that out of the way, we are going to hop into our next story. And this is regarding a video game adaptation, none other than Borderlands, of course. So this past Thursday, we got our first look at the video game adaptation of the same name, written and directed by Eli Roth. The film features an all-star cast that includes the likes of Kevin Hart, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Kate Blanchett, just to name a few, which you see here in the photo. Um, Spillman, we're both gamers. Did you get into the era of Borderlands? Because I feel like that was very much an era where like everybody was about Borderlands. We all have these eras. We have games where we have our
Oh
Halo,
yeah.
our Grand Theft Autos, Borderlands. I didn't necessarily hop on that bandwagon when that was going, but perhaps you did. So what are your thoughts on what we had with this live action adaptation?
So I was actually surprised to see some of the stars in this
Yeah,
vehicle. You know, Borderlands is
yeah,
a pretty big franchise, if you can say that. You know, obviously, I've played Borderlands. I played it because it was one of the free PlayStation games a couple of years ago. So I got into it then. It's a fun game. I I wish it was a bit more open world, but it's more a turn-based. It's basically a story-based video game. And the studio that did them did the Telltale Batman series, which was pretty well received. I don't know if you played those, but Telltale Studios is the studio that does Borderlands. I like the Borderlands mythology. It's an interesting mythology. I think the best Borderlands though was Borderlands 2. I think that's the
okay,
best one. But this is interesting. Like, you know, the fact that they got Kevin Hart for this and Jamie Lee Curtis, they got money. The video game distributors, they have money. I don't know how we've gotten to this place where they've got to lay people off, but they making money on these movies and stuff. So they got money. Let's be real. And they charge $60 a pop for each one of these games. And they're going to be they're the last ones that really do physical media still. So to me, I just feel like you know Borderlands is a great movie. I like the trailer. The trailer is very interesting. It captured the like situations of the game and made you feel like you were in the game and everything. So I think it's pretty interesting. You know, I whenever I hear you talk ill of Grand Theft Auto, it makes me a little sad in my heart because I'm like, come on, man. You know, the greatest video game series ever created is Grand Theft Auto, and I just feel like you are just being sad when you talk about it that way because I mean it's the goat. I mean I don't understand why you talk so bad about it. Like Saints Row is cool, but it's not that going Grand Theft Auto, man. So
I'll say this. So first, let me start with Borderlands. I didn't, as I mentioned, just a few moments ago, I didn't hop into that bandwagon of playing the game all that much. I'm aware of it, and I was aware of its popularity at the time, but as for whatever reason, I just never got around to really getting into the game. A lot of times when you have like television shows or movies, I feel like it's a similar situation where you have a lot of friends who are like, oh, you got to see this game, or oh, you got to play this game, or oh, you got to see this movie, or oh, you got to see this television show, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll get around to it, and it just never happened.
yeah.
Or you'll have a case where you do eventually check it out, and you're like, okay, I'm not trying to be a buzzkill, but I don't understand what the appeal is. I don't get it. So it wasn't the latter. It was the former. So I mean, with games such as Grand Theft Auto, and I know you harp on Grand Theft Auto. I have no beef with Grand Theft Auto. It just wasn't my jam. Like I tried to play it. I gave every attempt to play it. It just like I just wasn't able to get into it as much as I was with Saints Row. And mind you, I mean, you have other games like there who where people probably feel the same, similarly in my taste in games. So like if we're talking Saints Row, just like you were just mentioning now, you prefer Grand Theft Auto over Saints Row, and that's fine. Like I try not to
But
yuck.
I will give Saints Row, they have funner weapons. Like the weapons are more fun.
So
But,
maybe that's what it is. Maybe
you
it's the
know,
aesthetic. Maybe it's the aesthetic of it being so over the top that I enjoy.
yeah.
But I mean, there've been other
Because,
arguments.
I am a gangster. That's part of it too. I'm a thug. That's what they tell. If anybody's ever describes me to you, listeners and viewers, they would say, yeah, Spillman is an OG
Not
gangster,
a thug, y'all.
triple OG.
Not a thug, y'all.
So that's
No.
why I like,
We do
Grand
not
Theft Auto.
condone. We do not condone thuggery here or humor of living.
Oh, look.
Oh boy. But no. And speaking for you, try to get the balloons.
I'm trying to get the balloons to come up because I put my gang sign up. So balloons, there you go. Gang sign, gang sign.
But to speak further about games that are in that similar vein, right? Like, um, I I remember, I don't know if there are any folks out there that enjoy Fable. Like Fable was my game. Like I was all about Fable when that came out. Same goes for Mass Effect. Mass Effect was my game. Like, and I mean Fable, you could say it's kind of runs in line with Saints Row, because I mean, yeah, it deals with medieval times, right? But it's really over the top in some of the stuff that they do. And the same goes for, well, no, I wouldn't say the same goes for Mass Effect. Mass Effect is kind of more of your run of the mill kind of, even though they have some sci-fi components to it, it still takes itself, far more seriously than the other two games that I mentioned. So, um, from what I do remember seeing from Borderlands, it seems like the movie captures kind of the visual style of the game. It seems to greatly capture that, because I do remember the game being very colorful and visually striking, and it feels like that's what they're doing here. I know that there have been some folks that are hardcore into the game and the lore of the game, and they have been very critical of what they've seen in the game. Um, with me not being as intertwined with the game, I'll probably will have. I'm guessing I'll probably have like a easier time, or be more lenient with what the film has to offer once I finally do see it. But I will say this: I do like the fact that it is written and directed by Eli Roth. For any of those that don't know who Eli Roth is, he directed a Cabin Fever. He also did the recent horror film that I feel like was quite effective in going back to those retro old school horror films, slasher films, which was Thanksgiving. He directed that film as well. So if we're having the aesthetic or the flair that Eli Roth brings, because he has a very dark sense of humor, and he has a capacity of adding very visceral elements to his films, along with kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of humor. Then we might have something on our hands here that might be quite memorable, but only time will tell. On any final thoughts, Spilling, before we hop into some of our sports related topics to wrap up our show.
I'm gonna try to make this go as long as possible because I do not want to talk about the sports related topics that we're gonna talk about right here. So I just want to say Borderlands is a good movie. Eli Roth, I think that's a good pick because I think that the way that the movie, I mean the franchise goes is very like tongue in cheek and plays with a lot of parody of what the real world is, which I think is interesting and kind of leans. This is one of those video game properties where it makes sense that they're like, oh yeah, I can see how they made this into a movie. Like I don't think they'll
Pretty
ever make a
gruesome,
Grand
if I
Theft
remember
Auto.
right. It's pretty gruesome. I was saying
It's gruesome, but not like in a way where it's not like Doom or something like that. Like I wouldn't say it's something like that where it's like all gore and stuff, but like it's not. It's over the top, but it's over the top cinematically, and that's how those games always have played to me because I feel like they are more focused on the story rather than gameplay, which a lot of games more are on gameplay rather than the story. Like case in point, Mortal Kombat. That's all gameplay. That's why they just throw characters in there. So for Borderlands, to me, it's like
later. I feel like later though, they have done a better job. Like they've become far more in tuned with trying to really fill out that lore, because I feel like in the earlier parts of that series, while the game has always been entertaining, the the plot has been, let's be honest, very convoluted, where people are dying, people are coming back, like, oh, this is this person's like parent from like this century, and sometimes like it's like, okay, I'm trying to connect the dots here, and some of these timelines are not like connecting, which is why now we're having this soft reboot of sorts with the current iteration. Um but yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Like, we'll see what happens. The jury's still out, but it brings me hope, in thinking of other video game adaptations, that you have someone like Eli Roth, behind the camera, doing this film, and also writing it, from what I understand, co-writing it. So, as I said, the rest of this show, the last two stories that we
oh
have,
yeah. So another thing about Borderlands. Now, okay.
the last two stories that we have
I
are
don't want to talk about
absolutely
this.
sports related.
Boo.
And I wanted to briefly, talk about the All-Star game. Of course, it happened this past Sunday. I saw the NBA's best play against each other, where we had the East and the West competing, and I'm putting up air quotation marks, even though you can't see me, competing against one another for that in that All-Star game. It ended with a ridiculous final score, y'all, of 211 to 186. Saw the East winning, and Damian Lillard dropping 39 points to earn the MVP honors at the All-Star game. Now, there has been a lot of criticism, in the last couple of games, of how the All-Star game hasn't really been all that competitive. I'm going to have to agree. Spillman, what are your thoughts on what we saw in this All-Star game, and if we can get those All-Star games of old.
Well, I will say that immediately after this, they started making no Indianapolis rules about the All-Star game moving forward. Like they said that you got to have a certain number of international flights, you got to have certain number of luxury hotel suites and stuff. So they was like, "Hey, actually, we're not going to do this again because we're not going to be coming to these small markets," which I think is to the detriment of the NBA. And that has nothing to do with the actual game, but the actual game, a lot of these guys aren't from that Mamba type cloth, that Michael Jordan type cloth, that even Shaq, like, they don't bring it like, "Hey, we're gonna crush you in this All-Star game because if we playing, I'm gonna crush you." I feel like the games are games, but I just don't feel like they care about them anymore. The even like the commentators at times were aloof, like with the Steph and Sabrina Ionescu 3-point contest that they had. They were talking bad about Sabrina, like she didn't just hit as many threes as all the dudes in the previous contest we just saw. And it was like, bro, she came out here cold turkey and hit 26 of them, 26 points on there. Like, please be for real, like from the men's line. So to me, they really didn't really do a good job of showing that, like, this is our league. We've got great talents in both the men's and women's side. Steph is the greatest shooter of all time. So it's kind of, Sabrina was going to have a rough time of it with him, but she still is a lights out shooter.
She's still
lights out shooter. So to me, I just feel like the NBA, who's a league that tries to be the most politically forward looking and intelligent about these kind of issues, look kind of dumb and jockish this weekend. And then, they stole it from Obi's brother, who we didn't know it was Obi's brother. I for sure, until I'm serious, till Saturday night, I was like, Jerome Toppin, that boy name is Toby. I was like, that's Toby. Then he went out there and did that crazy 360, and they didn't give him all the points he should have deserved for that. To me, they stole it from him. So that frustrated me. I wish that they gave Jerome some more love on that. And it's also a sign that they can't get a player who's even in the NBA to be a championship level person with that. Like Matt McClung, love him. He played here at Georgetown and everything, but he ain't in the league. Oh, there's more things that you could do. I didn't know that. If you do this, it does that. You see that, ladies and gentlemen? We learn things every day with these hand gestures. So, I just, it was underwhelming, but, I heard Kevin Garnett say this, and you're going to love this. And I hate that I'm actually saying this on this podcast right now, but he said, it started when the NBA and Nike did not make LeBron into the dunk contest. And since then, the quality of all these events have gone down because people don't want to get embarrassed. LeBron didn't want to get embarrassed. Then Anthony Edwards don't want to get embarrassed. Zion don't want to get embarrassed. Ja Morant. But if you're supposed to be the guy, you got to do it on All-Star Weekend. That's what Michael did. That's what everybody does. So, yeah, it's kind of it's sad. What do you think?
So I feel like we're in a different era with the NBA stars that we have these days, where if we're talking about the 80s, if we're talking about the 90s, and even, briefly going into the early 2000s, it was about competing. Like being able to say, even among the greatest players that are there that weekend, that you are the best among them. Whether you're playing in the All-Star game, whether you're playing in the dunk competition, whether you're playing in the 3-point competition, whether you're playing in the skills challenge, is to be able to have those bragging rights of being able to say that you are the best, you are the greatest among the greatest. And I feel like this is the very reason, this is a very much a problem as to why we have the issue that we have currently with where the USA basketball stands among other basketball programs throughout the world, where we were just talking about just earlier where there's a sense of entitlement, right? There has to be that competitive fire in order for us to be able to hold on to those bragging rights of saying that you're the best. If you're becoming very lax about how you go about things and how you do things, then that's going to reflect in everything else that you do. So, like I said, a huge representation of that I feel can be demonstrated on the world stage when we have USA basketball going up against other teams. While I undoubtedly feel that we have the most talented players in the world, there is, I feel, a sense of entitlement that has happened in this current era that we have with basketball, where we just are now getting out of that era of load management that became a huge issue, and because there were things that were put in place in order to ensure that players played in more games. Now we're starting to get rid of that era that we have, but something has to be done where folks can get excited about All-Star Weekend again. I'll be honest, like, because of how the last couple of All-Star weekends have been, my excitement and my anticipation of that weekend have become less and less. So much so that this past weekend, I almost forgot that it was NBA All-Star Weekend. And that's saying something because, like, I remember in prior years growing up as a kid, even up through high school, that I was like, oh, like, I can't do anything this weekend. I got to put this on my calendar. This is NBA All-Star Weekend. You know, I know me and my peers are going to be talking about this like when we get back to school, that week, or it's just going to be, conversation that if you're working, that is going to be, had, whether it's in the barbershops, whether it's, around the cooler, if you're at work, you know, I know that this is going to be something that a lot of folks are going to be talking about that week following All-Star Weekend. And, I'll never forget even some of those competitive All-Star games that we've had where if I'm thinking back to like Jordan's last All-Star game, it was if I recall, it was in DC. What was that, 2000, 2001?
Oh,
One,
one.
2001, yeah. Where like that game went right down to the wire. And to have, all of these players like competing against one another. And normally if it's like a regular game, you're like, oh, okay, this person's gonna pull it off. And like when you're in an all-star game, you're like, okay, who's gonna pull it off? Because like every single player is a star player. So you always have those situations where you want to be able, because you talk about it among your peers, like this player is better than this player, or this player isn't as good as this player. And in the all-star game, like that becomes a reality where you can actually you can put those arguments to the side and actually see where certain players where they rank amongst their peers. And I would think, as someone who is an all-star, you will want to see where you stand too. Like, and don't get me wrong, like I understand, there's this concern about injury and all those things, and I get that. But that's insane to have a game where we have a score of 211 to 186. That tells me that no one is playing any defense whatsoever. And as I said, you want to, if we're talking about All-Star Weekend, we want it to be an event that people are talking about for weeks on end following that weekend. And I feel like now it's slowly becoming more and more casual. Far uh, fewer and fewer people are caring. And that's saying something where, as I said, I was passionate, growing up when it came to All-Star Weekend. It was something I looked forward to every year. And it was barely a blip on my radar this year. And that's crazy. That's crazy to say. So I don't know if Spillman, you have any, final thoughts, but I'm gonna move over to our last story. I find it funny too because he had just moved away just a moment ago, so I thought he was like ducking this last story.
Gentlemen, I will remind you that LeBron James has started the All-Star game for 20 straight years, a feat that no NBA player has done. And we've skipped over that because these other guys were hot dogging and not playing in the game. So instead of giving LeBron his GOAT-like accolades for, for 2 decades being the starting small forward for an all-star team, we can't even give him that thanks for being great and being a starter. But I think the starter thing is part of the problem. It's that, like that year that Yao Ming got voted in because he had all of China voting for him. Like, that's a popularity contest. That's not like the best player in the world. So, we've got
Yao is up there, regardless of how that turned out.
He's up there, but there's times where people have gotten voted in that should not have been on the team for sure. And an all-star isn't necessarily just your performance. I think if they would do a U.S. versus the world, that might change things, especially with the world having most of the MVPs of the last 5 or 6 years. That may give, and the U.S. kind of aging out. The best stars from the U.S. are all 30 plus, except for maybe Anthony Edwards.
And if I recall, don't they do that to a degree with?
They do it with the rookie game.
Yeah, I was gonna say
they were doing it with the rookie game for a long time. They changed the rookie game up, and that's another thing too, is that they changed up the format so much. Like last year, they had the 24. If you first won at 24 or something silly like that, and it's like that's not the rules of basketball. Just let them play the game,
right?
And also let it be competitive.
Yeah, y'all trying.
Maybe if they made it so that if you play the game, you can get $5 million for the game because you became an all-star, and that should be a recognition. But if you lose, you do not get anything. I think that would put an incentive in that.
I think what you recommended would probably work really well if it's the NBA versus the world, and having the world all-stars on one team and the NBA all-stars on one team, which would force them to be competitive because they don't want to be shown up by, all the other players that are, outside of the US showing them up, and having it, with the All-Star weekend being televised everywhere. Everyone would see the result of that, of whether they won or lost. So, I think that would kind of bring out the competitive fire in them to make that a competitive game. So I like that idea. I like that idea of having, Luka and Joker and company going up against, our US teams. But I'm trying to think. I mean, I feel like among all those all-stars that we had in those lineups, did we have enough for them to have a separate like world team?
Of course, they had enough to have the world team.
Like, okay,
you got a starting 5: Shea, Giannis, Luka.
Right. That's right.
Joker, and then I don't know who the other person would be, but they got more than enough. Embiid, you put Embiid on there because Embiid is from Cameroon.
Right.
Then you could argue because Cat be trying to say he's from Dominican Republic.
Yeah, Giannis, Joker, and Luka again. That bro,
it'd be a tough team. That'd be a really tough team. So
tough team.
And I think that would also, put a little bit of bragging rights on it because, it's nothing like just like people talked about. Everybody talks bad about the Lakers winning the end season tournament, but we did win it.
We'll get there. Don't worry.
That's right. We won the end season tournament because it was something we needed to go out and win.
We'll get there.
So go out and win that end season tournament was impressive. So you make it something that it actually has a like, oh no, we beat y'all. And y'all got to go around the world and tell people that we better than y'all. And so like I think that
I do like
get
that.
that competitive fire. But not all the NBA players are built like that anymore, too. That's part of the problem. Is those guys are not built like that. They're not. I need to crush you every time I see you type of people. Like,
But I feel like having that placed on them where you are placed in a situation where it could potentially embarrass you by losing, I feel like that would provide the competitiveness that I feel like a lot of people are seeking, out of the All-Star game. So I do definitely like that idea. But we're gonna hop into our last story, which
oh, one more thing about the
Philman was
All-Star
trying
game.
to avoid. Philman was trying to avoid and stall on. And that's none other with the Warriors going on a tear as of Thursday. What should say no, as of Friday, y'all. The Warriors are 9-2 since the gut wrenching loss that they had in double overtime to the Lakers. However, in the streak that they currently have right now, since that time, they are the second rated offense, the seventh rated defense. And there have been some, key points as to why that is. Of course, Klay Thompson has been, has taken his ego out of the situation, has gone to the bench. We have Pajemski, who's in the starting lineup, and we also have Draymond Green, of course, really cementing the defense with the team and leading that defense. And there is some other component to it that I want to hop in on, but of course, in this streak, that also includes a recent win that the Warriors had over the Lakers, blowing them out 128-110. Spillman, I like, sometimes that, you try to be as objective as possible. What are your thoughts on the recent streak that my Warriors have been on?
Well, I do believe that Steph is looking down with Father Time. He's got his guys with Draymond and Clay getting older every year. But I think that you guys are really playing good basketball. I think it really started. I know you talk about the blowout that y'all had against us, but when y'all cut that boy's hair on the team, when y'all made him cut his hair after he talked bad about the coach, it made people be like, "Hey, man, we in this together." I don't know why he cut his hair because he looked crazy with the haircut. But what's the boy's name? Kaminga.
Yes, yeah.
He's been playing out of his mind. Once he figured out, hey, I need to stop worrying about what goes on my head and worry about the basketball game, he started killing it. So to me, I feel like he's doing good. But I think that the Warriors, you guys are a good team. You're constructed well. So I'm sure that the way that you guys are constructed, you still got 3 Hall of Famers on your team. That little tiff where y'all tried to get our best player because you guys actually need the help. When you guys actually need the help, came up, and obviously you guys didn't go with it. But I think the Warriors are okay. Y'all are in the play-in. I feel like both of our teams are not designed really to win in the regular season anymore. But once we get into the playoffs, we have the experience and the systems in place to do well. So we'll see.
We definitely, will see. And I would just say it's been interesting to see, what changes have been made in order to kind of bring about this momentum, because I know a lot of times we talk about how important momentum plays when we're on a team. Oh, hold on, you're muted.
I know what the change was. Y'all paid y'all boy Stevie a whole bunch of money.
I'm gonna get in that part too. but here's the thing, though. That recently happened, and if you guys aren't aware of what I'm talking about, guys, that Spillman is alluding to. So Steve Kerr, which I wanted to get into, but you already mentioned it, so I'll hop in now. He signed a 2-year extension, 2-year, $35 million contract for 2 additional years with the Golden State Warriors. But just in speaking, just in general of what they have done in order to put together this run that they currently are on right now, credit goes to all the parties involved with their lineup that have been willing to do what is needed in order to, make a difference in the overall success of the team. The Clay situation gives me a lot of deja vu of what we saw with Westbrook and what he did with the Clippers, where we had a lot of players where you have a lot of Hall of Famers that are on the starting team, but it's not doing the team any good by being very top heavy of having a lot of those players in the starting lineup. And it was doing a disservice to the team overall. And it took one player among those Hall of Famers that you have on your team to be willing to take a role off the bench. And, we have such a situation with Clay, who, is taking his ego out the situation and is willing to come off the bench, which is terrific because now you have a Clay Thompson that is going up against second units of many of the other teams versus, the Warriors not really having as much depth by putting, keeping him in the starting lineup. By now opening things up and having Clay come off the bench and having, some of your role players stepping into that role on the starting team, not only does that help with the development of those younger players, it helps also with the dynamic in the locker room. It helps to develop them, to build their confidence. So when the time comes in the postseason to be able to call on them, to rely on them, to contribute to what you're trying to do as a team, it it more than likely will be an easier transition versus not developing them at all and asking them to hop right in to contribute when you're not demonstrating with your actions that you trust them. So hopefully, as I mentioned before, when they were really struggling, I had a feeling that this was coming, that something was coming where they were going to turn the corner. Don't really have an idea of how long it will continue, but I'm still happy to see what I'm seeing with the um what is it, the decisions that a lot of the folks in the lineup are doing to sacrifices. That was the word I was looking for. The sacrifices that players on the team are making in order to ensure the overall success of the team. And then also, of course, credit to Kerr for making that decision and making those changes and helping a lot of the players buy into what those new roles are, because that there's something to be said in that too.
Yep, I still feel like I remember when your team fired Mark Jackson, and everybody was like, "How could we fire Mark Jackson?" And then with the same players, like I always give Steve Kerr this. He took the same players. He looked at everybody and said, "Hey, I see we got David Lee out here, but David Lee is not going to make this thing go." He put Draymond in, and they have never looked back. Like since they put Draymond in, they never looked back. I talked to a lot of people about Draymond. People try to look at just numbers and say, "Oh, Draymond is just this guy. He only gets like 8 points a game. He only gets like 7 or
His impact
6."
is far more than that. You don't.
And I just tell people, I'd be like, you don't really know basketball if you don't see what Draymond does. He may not get the counting stats because not everything is countable in basketball. You can do something good without it actually giving you a hash mark on that stat sheet. But just to see that team to continue its success is something I've been a little jealous of for years. And I'm just happy big man basketball is back, because for a second it looked like y'all had killed big man basketball. And I know you, as a guard type guy, was happy to see the tall people not doing what we're supposed to do in our game, because it is our game. But those boys, I take all my hats off to them.
And I was going to say, to take it a little more on a personal level. I don't know, we don't talk about it a whole bunch here on Movers and Shakers Unlimited, but once upon a time in our younger days, me and Spills used to play, in a basketball league, and we were on the same team. And in speaking to, that dynamic that Draymond Green, brings to the team. I'm sure he'll appreciate this if he's watching the show or if he, sees it at some point. Lionel brought that component of Draymond Green to that team.
Oh
Why,
yes.
while you have a player who's not scoring, tons of points in terms of bringing that mindset of defense and still, being that linchpin, if you will, that instigator of getting the defense in a in such a way or leading it in such a way to ensure the overall success of the team. He brought that component to the team. We had shooters on the team. I like to say I was one of the shooters on the team.
I was the
Taylor,
shooter, ladies and gentlemen. I was shooting.
shout out, shout out to Ted. Shout out to Ted. He was another shooter on our team. And we had like all of those components, but everyone brought something, to that team that we had to ensure the success of that team. And while it didn't always have like the sexiest numbers, everyone didn't always have the sexiest numbers. Like
We was getting wins, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's important.
It was still everyone had their role and brought intangibles to that team. So there's definitely something to be said about that. But with that out of the way, Spillman, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to punt it over to you as usual. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, I was a gangster. I got gang signs that I do. I'm happy to be here every week and talk to you. You can check me out on Instagram at Truly Spill. Check us out. Make sure you give us 5 stars, share, comment if you will, and see us again next Saturday. Thanks. Peace.
Cool. Well, there you guys have it. Again, I want to thank Spillman, aka Spills, of course, for coming on in each week and doing This Week in Pop Culture with me. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and you can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X, but also Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. Stay tuned, guys. As I said, this weekend I will be at the Travel and Adventure Show. However, we do have some cool shows that are on the way. If you guys have really been enjoying a lot of these anniversary shows, man, we got something in store for you. Just be on the lookout this week as I will be putting the official announcement up, but I will tease that we do have something related to Shawshank Redemption, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And we do have 2 stars from that film that will be chatting with us about that film next week. So stay tuned because I'm going to be posting an official announcement of who those stars are. So got some awesome stuff on the way for you guys. With that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon. Peace.